2026 is going to be an awesome year. We got some pretty cool stuff coming up. First off, we got Foundations of Recovery. This is our flagship program. We're starting it in January.
This is for anyone, man, woman, or couple who wants to come and reclaim their heart from shame, trauma, and betrayal. We start off with an education on all sorts of principles, give you the common language. We feed you from a fire hose in terms of all things recovery.
It is such a great start to recovery. And we get at the roots of things, Tyler. This isn't like any other program. Like, this is our healing journey in process, and Foundations is where we begin.
If you look at the value that you're getting there to kick off a good recovery with all of the right education, all of the right language, and a team to get you started while also being directed by Brandon and myself through the whole process, what a deal.
So if you're interested, if you're struggling, if you've been wanting to do something for a long time, jump into this. This only comes around every so often, and we would love to have you there.
Click the link in the description to sign up for it. And to make it even sweeter, we're also including a raffle for a free pass to the Radiant Dawn retreat. Anyone who signs up for Foundations will be added to the raffle for that free Radiant Dawn pass. If you're a man and you sign up for Foundations, your name still gets entered, and you can give that pass away if you win it to any woman that you want to.
So what you're saying, Tyler, is if you sign up and participate in Foundations, you could possibly go to Radiant Dawn for free?
That's exactly what I'm saying, which is crazy because Foundations by itself is already an insane value.
Man, I sound so salesy. But it actually is awesome. So come to Foundations. And even if you don't come to Foundations, sign up for Radiant Dawn. It's beyond therapy, the best healing experiences that you can have.
Click the link below and come join us.
What is the history behind betrayal, trauma, and sex addiction?
Welcome to the Real Talk Recovery Podcast with the Therapy Brothers.
We're brothers, we're therapists, and we know recovery.
Bring your stories, your questions, your successes with real recovery. Okay, Brandon, this will be an interesting one today. I think it'll probably glean out a few things for people to think about in terms of what kind of treatment they're getting. We got a couple new reviews. I want to read one of them for you today. It's by Meld 1982. It says, audio is lagging. I love the podcast, but I've noticed in a few episodes there has been an echo, which is very distracting.
Yes, our audio has sucked. Yeah, we had a software we were using that was supposed to really, really help us, and it really, really hindered us. And, you know, those times when Tyler was talking over the guest or I was interrupting in the middle of some random. Yeah, that was our software doing its thing. And we believe that we have it all fixed. So we apologize. And I just want to say thank you to everybody who reached out to us saying, hey, you need to fix that. It probably took us about 3 episodes too long.
To recognize it.
Yeah, we appreciate your patience with us, and hopefully this is much better.
Yes, we'll continually be figuring it out, and we do get better because of your feedback like this. So thank you. Thanks, Meld 1982. Appreciate the fact that you're still listening to us and that you're also willing to give us that feedback.
Yeah. So anyways, how are you doing, Tyler?
I'm doing great, man. We're kind of in that stage of the end of the year, school year, got a senior in a high school. And so it's a lot of lasts right now, last track meet, you know, seminary graduation, high school graduation coming up. Everything's a last.
I was talking to my oldest daughter today, and she's like, yeah, in first period, we're watching this movie. In second period, we're watching, and I'm thinking, like, I've been hearing this for like a month. I think the teachers kind of shut it down. Like, hey, year's done. Like, I am done. Movie time. My one daughter went to school today in her pajamas, and she's like, yeah, it's a pajama day. So
I honestly think that the end of the school year these days is Groundhog Day.
I know. It's Groundhog Day party thing. Hey, the teachers heard it though.
Oh man, I don't know how they do it.
I volunteer for an hour in one of my son's classes, and I'm done after an hour in that class. So yeah, they are my hero.
Yeah, shout out to every teacher. You do whatever you do. It's amazing how you do it.
Yes. So, and thank you for teaching our children.
Yeah.
All right, Tyler. So I have kind of an interesting topic, I think, and it'll be fun to break this down with you. Just considering what we've done for so long, and I think we can intertwine our own personal experience along with take a look at from a high level some of the historical background of kind of the philosophies behind treatment of sex addiction and betrayal trauma. So, and I have a couple. I actually came a little prepared today. I have a couple quotes I want to read to you. That's
not your style at all, man.
Yeah, I know. I don't have like a poem to bust out or anything, but so I guess where I want to start, and maybe you can fill in your experience here too, is kind of where I started my history of things. And so I was studying economics in my undergraduate, and I was learning about supply and demand, and I was also being raised in a very very conservative, religious culture. And so the internet was just like coming out when I was in college. It was just like people were discovering email and emailing each other like crazy and playing Snake on their phones and things like that. And so, but the internet was starting to come out. And so I was in this really conservative culture with a lot of my friends and everybody's discovering pornography on the internet. And there was this kind of this shame storm that was just going across the land, so to speak, where a lot of covert sexual behavior was happening. There was a lot of like things being taught, like it's bad, don't do it, it's horrible.
You'll end up in prison.
Like you're like, it's bad. And in the meantime, most moms and dads of adolescents and children having no idea how to teach about sexuality, healthy sexuality. And so, anyways, I'm studying supply and demand, and I'm looking at all of these factors. I'm hearing about all my friends looking at porn. I'm hearing from, the church and the religion saying it's bad, it's bad, it's bad. And I'm seeing that parents are totally unprepared. And I'm thinking there's going to be a huge demand for treatment of sexual addiction. And because there's a storm going on here. So, and I wasn't wrong. But it kind of led me on a journey a little bit, and I think you too, Tyler, of learning and opening my eyes up to some things that I didn't expect. So I just want to stop for a second, and maybe if you can speak to kind of that time of discovery and kind of seeing this storm come.
Yeah, right. Well, if you want to go back to that, for me, it was high school where it all started. That's where my own stuff started. And it was exactly what you're talking about, that you were getting these messages about how terrible pornography was, but we didn't get a lot of education about how to handle pornography and about what was actually going on with pornography. And there wasn't a lot of teaching and understanding about sexuality that way as it related to pornography. And so I remember, Brandon, being in like a specific meeting. We were in a church meeting together with me, you, and Rex, all in a line. And there was a talk about pornography, and every one of us just like slunk down in our chairs and like hid out there for a while. Right. So that's all happening. But then you're going to school with supply and demand. I was going to school for specifically to go work with families. And I wanted to specifically at the time I felt like I needed to work with marriages and with men. And because I had some experiences where I recognized the power of men and how many men weren't stepping up to the plate in terms of how they could influence their children and things. And then I ended up working for the drug courts of Southeastern Idaho for a while, fresh out of graduate school. And while I was in graduate school, you called me and were like, hey, I'm kind of seeing this thing. Like, I kind of want to go and be a therapist myself. And so you went to go get your degree as a therapist. I was already getting my degree as a therapist. And then I ended up working in the addictions world and in the legal system world in Idaho for about 8 years while you got your degree. And then you started doing your work where you can kind of fill in that gap.
Right. I think it's interesting to kind of look at our own personal experiences and story, along with what was going on kind of on a bigger level in terms of where we got dropped into the mix. So I think it was like 1983, Patrick Carnes, the father of sex addiction, he started doing research. He started actually gathering data and writing books. And he wrote several books. One of his most popular books is called Out of the Shadows. He also started to create training programs for therapists and just create a lot of content and processes for treatment of sex addiction. This is back in 1983. So he was one of the first ones to call it a sex addiction. And when he started using the term sex addiction, it came with a lot of controversy. And even to this day, sex addiction is not in the diagnostic manual for mental health disorders. So sexual addiction isn't looked at as a real thing by a lot of people. And there's kind of two camps. There's the camp of sex addiction is absolutely a real thing. And then there's the camp of, if you call it a sex addiction, you create a lot of shame and it's bad and you're actually horrible to call it a sex addiction. And these people battle back and forth together. And even a lot of sex therapists really don't like sex addiction therapists. And so I want to read a quote here, see what you have to say about this. So this is actual sexual addiction critic, okay, Tyler? And this is what he says. It's a guy named John Money from 1989, okay? So this is, think about it. Carnes has been going for about 6 years.
He's the first one to call something a sexual addiction, and he's developing treatment for it. And his treatment looks quite a bit like the traditional sort of addiction model.
Well, a lot. He pulled a lot. So when we say we're talking about Carnes. He pulled a lot from AA, and it was a lot of like steps and things were in there. But he also brought in a lot of kind of data-backed scientific stuff. And Carnes, was a therapist, researcher, PhD. So he kind of had both going on. He was bringing in the AA stuff, but he was also bringing in the research side of things. So this is a guy named John Money in 1989, and he says, I want to minimize my screen down so I can actually see your face when I read this. So he says that, sorry, Tyler, I'm almost done. Okay, here we go. He says, sexual addiction is a newly coined term for a disorder as fictitious as thirst addiction, hunger addiction, or reading addiction. Sexual addictionology does not address the specificity of addiction. Instead, it decrees that the only non-addictive form of sexual expression is lifelong heterosexual fidelity and commitment in monogamous marriage. Everything else is the gateway of sin through which exits the broad road to sexual depravity, degeneracy, and addiction. Within addictionology, the wheel of degeneracy has made a full turn.
Okay.
So, what's your take?
Yeah, well, basically, it's what I hear in what he's saying is that he's challenging this new industry because the new industry is what you might call really traditional. And what he's saying is that the industry is saying that the only way that you don't have a sex addiction is if you're in a marriage with full fidelity.
This is 1989. So a heterosexual marriage with monogamy and fidelity.
Right. And he's saying that if that's the standard, then you're discounting the fact that people have all sorts of different drives and templates, and you're pathologizing anyone who might fall out of that main category, and you're making something up over something that's as simple as, getting thirsty. Like everybody has a sexual drive. That's what he's saying.
Yeah. So a thirst addiction. So Tyler, here's the deal. Like, we're sex addiction therapists. We should hate that comment right there. But I actually appreciate it in a lot of ways. And let me explain. I'm in both camps. I've seen sex addiction treated the way that he's explaining here, where every part of your sexuality is bad and wrong and should be subdued and hidden and not accepted and shoved underground. And that's sobriety. That's recovery.
And that's how some treatment has happened in the past.
Right. Unless your sexuality is just missionary style sex with your wife. And that is it. That is all that it can encompass. And so it's this, when sex addiction, I believe sex addiction treatment goes as far as total rigidity and sexual self-rejection, it becomes problematic. When the critics of sex addiction swing the other way, and we've talked about this in the past, Tyler, to pure chaos, to pure, I do whatever I want to do with my genitals, and regardless of the consequences or the whatever happens to other people, that becomes problematic. Can I justify lying and manipulating and gaslighting and all those things because it's just my sexuality? I hope not.
That would be unhealthy.
Can I justify an imbalanced life where I'm compulsive and spending loads of time and money and energy connecting with people online and neglecting other things around me? But it's just my sexuality? I hope not. Right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So what you're saying, Brandon, is that, and this is something that I think we've seen since we kind of stepped into this, and from both of our different angles, is that we've been on a pendulum ourselves where there's a swing back and forth between these two places. And if we were to look at it from the extremes, you've got almost the rigid treatment, which is shut down all your sexuality. It's caused you all these problems. You need to make sure that you put a lid on it, all the swing. And then it swings all the way to the else of like self-expression, love, freedom, like there is no consequence. And over the last 20 years, we've been swinging on this pendulum, trying to figure out where's the right healthy mix of what good health really is and good recovery. What does good recovery actually really look like? Yeah.
That when I was first taught, Tyler, it was very, very, very rigid. And I didn't even realize it because I was so in the culture of it. It was like everybody throw your chastity belt on and punish yourself for every erection that you've ever gotten. Like that really, there was cultures of like 12-step meetings that were all about, like, guys would literally check in every week about how horrible they were because they were sexual beings, basically. And what do you know? They didn't get better from their shame and things like that. And it's interesting in the culture that we're in, Tyler, where the church has really kind of shut up a little bit about it. They don't address it that often. They don't bring it up. And instead of beating the drum of don't, now they've just kind of gone away with it, which is fascinating. I don't know what that means.
Yeah, I'm not sure I see it the same way. I still think there's a prevalent voice there, and I see like a lot of churches actually what I think I'm starting to see is a lot of churches have started to do their own little swing on the pendulum a little bit into this place of, hey, let's just take the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints program, their programming. They changed the lyrics in the book for Betrayal Trauma. They actually took out the word addiction, and they called it like a bad behavior or a compulsive behavior fairly recently.
Right.
The reason they did that is because they've tuned into this idea of shame, and how shame isn't necessarily a helpful thing in terms of the overall recovery process. And so there's a thought out there that if you label somebody as an addict, then you're shaming them. So you no longer use the word addict. Right.
Right. But it's interesting because I think you're right. I agree with you. I see culture shifting and trying to remove shame, like cultures that create shame. But I also see, I hear some underground stuff a lot. Like you have to go 6 months without masturbating before you're eligible to serve a mission. And so what does that do?
Right. It sort of kind of sends mixed messages unless there's an understanding of principles and how they can interact with each other. Right. Yeah. It's back to this idea and this kind of, and I think we've seen this on the other side of it too with betrayal. Many of you have heard about our in-person retreats. We're really excited about our upcoming Rising Sun retreat. I could talk all day about all the reasons why you should attend, but I'll let those who have attended in the past speak for themselves.
If I had a friend who was contemplating attending this conference, I would say do it. Sign up as soon as you can.
Man, you got to do it. You got to do it. I'll be you guys' advertising arm because I'm going to tell everybody I know about this conference.
Oh man, I would say again, I have nothing but positive things to say about it. So
there's no reason not to come.
Definitely attend.
If you have the means, it would be a mistake not to come.
Do it. You won't be disappointed.
Well, I would say it takes a leap of faith to come to one of these things because you're not going to know what it's going to be coming into it, and it's completely worth it.
Just go for it.
So I would tell that friend that he should definitely come.
It is definitely worth the time, the effort, the money.
If you have any thought whatsoever whether or not you should go, just go.
Even after I signed up, I told my wife I didn't want to come the first day. I was like nervous as all get out. I knew it was going to be uncomfortable, everything about it. But I would look at that person and say, you will never regret.
To help you to know how to find the joy that you're seeking in your life, to do this, take it seriously, and add it to your regimen moving forward. It has been powerful, just incredibly powerful.
If you want to get a better feel for what you might experience and get more information, go to risingsun.org. That's risingsun.org, or find a link in the show notes. Hope to see you in person at the next event. I think we've seen this on the other side of it too with betrayal trauma, Brandon, where, betrayal trauma was at first traditionally taught from the lens of strict codependence, and you're a co-addict and you're enabling everything and you have your own illness. And then it's kind of swung all the way over to, in some forums, in some formats, like you don't have any responsibility to get better. It's all the other person's fault. Like you're a victim. And neither one of those extremes is healthy either. There's some place in the middle where both of those principles have truth to them.
Well,
right?
Tyler, I think there's something to kind of the extremes here. Is if you're like trying to be extremely rigid and perfect as a, in quotation marks, sexual being, a perfect sexual being, versus swinging all the way to the other side, right? Or if you're 100% at fault and responsible for his addiction, and and you're a codependent, versus I have zero bit of responsibility here. The extremes to me say this. Well, let's talk about in the middle for a minute. The middle, there's some real accountability and vulnerability to sitting in that truth. It puts the power back on you, rather than you being kind of a victim or you handing it over to someone else's voice. Am I making any sense, Tyler?
Yeah, I think so. I'm not, if I'm just an addict, there's no hope, but if there is no addiction, then there's no reason to work.
Yeah. And so in the middle of it,
in the middle I have to own that.
Yeah, I'm going to choose my behaviors. I'm going to choose my life. I'm going to choose what I create. Right? Let's back up with betrayal trauma for just a second. Because this one's fascinating. So Carnes comes out, sex addiction, treatment protocol stuff. And AA is behind the scenes. I'm a big fan of the 12 steps.
Oh, I love them.
Yeah. So the big book, Bill W., came up with a big book. AA is behind the scenes, and it's like the thing to help with addiction. And so naturally, when sex addiction started becoming a thing, then that model started to infiltrate into treating sex addiction. Here's one of the problems, Tyler, is AA is big on codependency, right? That there's Al-Anon and things like that. Mm-hmm. Well, a partner of a sex addict has a little bit different thing going on. Not to say that partners of alcoholics don't experience betrayal and deceit and gaslighting. All that stuff happens, but there's an added level of betrayal when it's sexual infidelity that happens. And so to just use the AA model and say, nope, you're the codependent and you need to read Codependent No More. Go read that book. Mm-hmm. And work your 12 steps, and voila, like you're going to not be codependent anymore and you'll get better. Didn't quite work. There was a missing piece, right, Tyler?
Yeah, there was. Although I would say that doing those things could be helpful.
Working the 12 steps is always helpful.
Working the 12 steps, reading Codependent No More, I think can definitely provide some help.
I've recommended that book many times.
Me too.
Yes.
Yeah.
But if we just stop there, then it puts the onus on the partner to say, okay, like my codependency is 100% the issue here, which is not true.
Right.
So we were right in the midst of this, Tyler, and we've talked about this a lot, but when the pendulum swung, it swung hard. So Barbara Steffens comes out with Your Sexually Addicted Spouse, and it swings over to betrayal trauma.
Well, in so many ways, like when I read that book, it was like music to my ears in a lot of ways. Because
at the climate then, it was actually like, oh, good. Like stop kind of.
Somebody's actually finally validating the spouse. Someone's actually seeing that there's more to this than just the spouse is just sick and needs to get better, all of that stuff.
Right. But and we've talked about this before, but it's gone too far. Mm-hmm. It's gone too far to a place of I am a total victim of you, and therefore my ability to get better and find peace and happiness is gone until you change. Right? And the middle ground is what, Tyler?
The middle ground is both. I think that's the challenge here, is that we as human beings have such a difficult time finding the right middle ground where there's two principles in play that work together. There's always something else that has to be balanced out with the true principle we're looking at. You've got justice and mercy. You get love and law. You get wants and needs. You get the balance of change and acceptance. Like those things, they coexist, and we make a mistake when we discount the fact that those principles have to coexist. It's part of the natural law of things. It's the way things are. And so if we're stuck on one side of the principle, usually we swing to the side of the principle that we haven't been living. And then we're like, oh, I got to, like, it's like when with boundaries, I finally start figuring out boundaries. That's You know what boundaries
start
are?
throwing up stone walls like crazy.
That's law that we're trying to teach to be added to the love that was there. Like it's both. We don't want to give up the love. We just want to add law. And so if we're doing those things, we have to be willing to look at these multiple principles and say, where do these synthesize together instead of either or?
Yeah. And that's what it's been fascinating to watch it kind of on a macro level, Tyler, because you're talking about like balancing that dialectic right there in the middle and being able to say, I am responsible for my happiness and I'm not okay that this person has hurt me in this way. Both things can exist at the same time.
And it's interesting because as a therapist, you could have two clients back to back with similar issues, and you might give one client advice that's totally the opposite of the other client in a way, where it's like, so for instance, I'll give you this, like, you know how I feel about pornography. I actually believe pornography is a scourge. I do believe that pornography is damaging to people's lives. I would consider it to be evil. All those things that we hear and we get judged on, and it's like, oh, that's shame-based, this, that, and the other. And yet I had a client come in, and I talked about this in one of my groups just this week, actually, but he came into me and he was telling me about a different therapist he went to for his porn problem. And he was in with his therapist and he was completely suicidal. He thought he shouldn't live anymore. He was dirty. He was the scum of the earth. He was worthless. He was telling his therapist about this, and the therapist looked at him and was like, dude, it's just porn. Right? That was brilliant of that therapist.
From that perspective, in that time for him right then, absolutely. We needed to swing back to self-acceptance.
We needed to add self-acceptance, shame resiliency. And now I might have a client come in today and be like, dude, porn's awesome. Like, it's amazing. Like, I get to do whatever I want. I can find anything I want. And I'm probably going to go the other way with him a little bit and be like, and what's it costing you?
Let's look at the consequences.
Let's look at the ripple effect of your relationships, your concentration, your job, your energy. Let's take a look at that and actually see, this is a big deal.
Right.
Like, and I could be a good therapist for both of those clients if I understand the interplay between the two principles.
That middle ground.
Right.
Yeah.
It's finding the middle ground, and it's trying to find out, to be in touch with helping the client learn what good health is inside the middle ground. Like, so for instance, I actually happen to believe in being a proponent of that healthy sexuality is more that traditional way, that it should be kept within the bounds of marriage, and that fidelity is an actually very good, powerful thing, and it's good for the soul. It's also good for the body, and there's research that shows that.
I think you missed something there, but we can talk about that later.
But I happen to believe those things,
right?
And so I don't want to like villainize anyone who believes those things, right? And I also have to be open to the fact that other people do have other experience, and at a bare minimum, I need to be curious enough to try to understand what their experience is.
Well, yeah, because if you just shoot all over them of like, you're not just having sex with your wife and that's all your sexuality, and you're bad, then what good does that do?
I would rather have the conversation of, let's take the you're bad out of it altogether, and let's look at what's going to be effective for your life and your overall goals.
Right.
And then principally speaking, I think most people will end up landing in a certain spot.
Right. Right. But to your point, I think you're making a really good point, which is to force somebody into that space automatically isn't going to help them swing the pendulum to that middle ground, that really healthy middle ground. Rather, to meet them where they're at, to understand them, and to help them evaluate what they want out of their life and what they want to create is gonna help them kind of gain some consciousness and awareness in order to move to where they want to go. Right?
That's right.
Okay, so I think, Tyler, it's been a really interesting experience. I want to come back to the macro level of it. So you're talking like the micro level in the therapy office, one-on-one with these guys, right? The macro level, we've watched these things swing back and forth and back and forth. And And there's a lot of products out there and programs that you can go either way with, right?
Oh yeah, for sure.
I just, like in interviewing therapists, sometimes we'll get therapists who have been trained in sex therapy. And it's interesting that the kind of what I see happen in terms of like my partners and stuff who are like, I don't know if we can hire a sex therapist. I'm like, we need a sex therapist, but we need one that also understands that sex addiction is a real thing. But we need sexual self-acceptance, and we need, we actually need both. And, why doesn't the treatment and the programs get to that place where I think it's time. It's time for I think that sexual self-acceptance and self-discovery, and I can explain that in a minute, is absolutely essential to the healing process for sex addiction. Are you following me?
I think what you're basically saying is accepting the reality of who you are will actually aid in the process of shame resiliency and allow you to make choices about your own sexuality that will be your choices that you can own.
Yeah. So instead of using force and control and rigidity, back up a little bit. Let's use some compassion, some acceptance, some understanding, which will then heal the shame. And it doesn't mean, and this is where it's so scary for people to hear what I'm saying, because then that means that, well, you're just going to go have sex with all these people. It doesn't mean that. It means that you understand yourself, you love yourself, and you know who you are, and now you can make your choices as to what you want to do, and be conscious of the consequences of what you're choosing, right? But when there's this undertone in sexual addiction treatment that sexuality is dirty, wrong, disgusting, and the problem, you'll never get to actual recovery. You'll never get there. And when there is the other side of things where it's like, this isn't even a problem, do whatever the heck you want, then you'll never get to recovery. You'll never get there, right? So
exactly. And I think the reason why it's hard to get there to that middle ground, Brandon, is because on either side of it, there's such deep emotion because of past experience. You take someone who's felt judged by a rigid way of being raised, they have a tendency to spring back like a rubber band that's been pulled to a thing, and they finally go, oh, like I can let go of that judgment. Wham! They go the other direction,
right?
And they don't find the middle at first, and vice versa. If you have somebody who's having had got an addiction and they're in a bunch of denial and they're like, yeah, I should do whatever I want. Like, I'm not hurting anybody. I'm watching these kids get like abused on my porn, but that's whatever. That's their choice. Like, everyone to their own thing, like whatever. It's like, well, when they finally realize that they've like been complicit in maybe something that's damaging other people, and they see the ripple effects, they spring back like the rubber band, and they come the other way and they go, boom, I'm shutting everything down. It's over. Like, yeah. Oh, hold on a minute. Like, wherever I was at had some kernel of truth, and I've got to hold on to the kernel of truth, but I've got to be willing as I spring back to look for the other kernels of truth. Right. And that's really hard to do. Like, take someone who's been betrayed. It's really hard to go to someone who's been betrayed and be like, yeah, you've got to accept that your partner is a sexual being.
Right.
Because it hurts. Like, it's scary. It's like, it's caused so much damage. There's been a bomb that's gone off in the relationship around that topic. So of course there's going to be some skepticism and negativity. And the pathway through has to look at that.
But Tyler, the alternative, like, let's look at the alternative. Let's say this betrayed partner goes to their partner and says, I want to know you. I want to know everything about who you are as a sexual being. Like, I'm going to be safe. I'm going to be open. And let's say he says, I want to have sex with prostitutes all the time. I don't want to be in a monogamous relationship. That's who I actually truly am. Okay. And let's say she says, nope, can't be, don't. What then happens?
Well, then it feels like to the partner who's started to open up, like they're being shut down and they can't have their feelings. Now, on the flip side of that, Brandon, the partner who's then listening after they've been burned and they're trying to be open-minded, it doesn't mean that they also go like, oh, sweet, like I'll go find the prostitute, like go do that. Like, I love you so much that's going to be amazing. Like, well, as long as our marriage stays together.
Yeah. But Tyler, my point is this, is when you say, okay, I will reject my reality and I will force myself to be what you want me to be. What happens? Resentment, secrecy, all this stuff. I would suggest it would be better for that guy to go sleep with all the prostitutes, but realize that, hey, here's your consequences for it. Deal with it. Like, you chose this. This is your reality. At least you're stepping into what you feel like is true for you. But you're going to learn, you're going to grow from the consequences of that. And you know what? Along the way, you might lose your marriage. In fact, you probably will.
You will.
But I would suggest it'd be better for him to go do that for her sake than to pretend and hide and go to that secrecy. And do you see what I'm saying?
Well, what you're saying is there needs to be room inside that relationship to have that discussion. And this is a two-way street, to have that discussion where he can say those things and she can say, wow, like, thanks for sharing that with me. That took a lot of courage. And, that's stirring up a whole bunch of stuff in me. Like, I don't know how I feel about all of that. But and then he gets a chance to go, yeah, I know that's probably hard to hear. And I'm not saying I'm going to go do all of that either, but that's where I'm at.
A relationship like that, Tyler, leads to fidelity. It leads to trust. So, and this is that taboo, uncomfortable space where it's like, I can go to my partner and say, this is who I am as a sexual being. And there's part of a fantasy or a desire that I want to go do that, but there's a bigger desire to not have those consequences, to stay faithful with you. And if you're safe and open and I'm safe and open, then we can talk about those things going on inside of us. And we're going to feel more galvanized. We're going to feel more trust. We know each other, and we're going to feel more connected, right? So, but we've kind of got off onto this. The point being, we're trying to talk about this middle ground, right? Sexual self-acceptance, but at the same time, navigating the consequences and the structure. And that creates choice. It creates openness. It creates connection between couples. Mm-hmm. That's the space we want to hit. But there's a lot of vulnerability there.
Yes. Again, it's two principles. It's acceptance and love contrasted up against boundaries. And that's where the healthy form of living is going to usually fall for people. I often talk to my clients about using language like a part of me. So if my partner comes to me and says, hey, do you ever want to do this, this, or this? I go, a part of me has thought about that, or a part of me has wondered what that would be like, or a part of me has really kind of, been curious about that. And there are other parts of me who are making this choice and this choice and this choice. And all of that is true. Not just, yep, I thought about that. That makes me a dirtbag, this and that and the other, like,
right.
It's over, right?
Right.
There's multiple parts of all of us. And I think we're all lying to ourselves if we don't acknowledge that every one of us does have our own darkness. And when we can acknowledge that and own it, we actually get more opportunity to make choice around it.
Exactly.
So
exactly. That's the sweet spot. Yeah. So this has been a good discussion, Tyler. I there's a lot more to discuss here. I think we could take a lot of these things one by one and really pick this apart even more so.
Yeah, I don't even know if we even addressed the topic that we were supposed to be on today.
Well, I think it is fascinating. We've been in this for a long time now, and just from our perspective, kind of seeing the waves of change come, And the other thing to say is how just new this whole thing is in terms of figuring it out. I mean, 1983 wasn't that long ago. I guess it was a little while ago now, but
yeah.
But really, with the internet coming out, and a lot of things have shifted and changed, and so people are still figuring things out. And some things are really working for treatment, and some things aren't.
Yeah, I think we're doing far better than we ever did when we started. and we're going to be far better 20 years from now than we are today.
Yes.
Because we're in the same process. We're in the same game. There'll be somebody else talking 20 years from now about the kind of stuff you and I are doing and going like, whoa, like what were they thinking?
And they'll be playing a clip of me talking like, oh, geez.
Like, oh, geez, let's break that one down. Like, listen to this Brandon Patrick dude, you know, and that's okay. Like but that's the thing is we have to embrace that that's how life is. Like we're constantly trying to get better. And what both you and I are starting to see is that we've experienced, I've had clients, I have longtime clients who come to me and they say to me, Tyler, you're much different today than you were 5 or 6 or 10 years ago. And I say, well, in what ways? And sometimes they say, man, you're a lot less rigid. And in other ways they go, yeah, you're saying things now that you wouldn't have said to me 5 years ago. Mm-hmm. And I go, you know what? You're right. But I'm also a little bit more grounded in understanding the interplay of these principles that we're talking about. And I wasn't, especially when I was working my own recovery, I was coming at it from this rigid place and punishment. And I was trying to shut myself down. And what I found through the course of my own recovery journey, let alone our own career, is that for me, the pathway into recovery has both acceptance and boundaries, and it needs both. I can't deny who I am. I need to own everything about who I am and what I've done. And I need to give myself the opportunity to be a living, growing, deciding being, because that's ultimately how we were designed to be.
Just going along with that, you know, as things shift and change and all these things, coming back to what you just said, there's principles that I know work for peace and happiness. And we can call it recovery, but the reality is that statement, the truth will set you free, is so profound on many levels. And to me, living a life of integrity, being in alignment with God, congruency, that's another word, whatever we want to call it, but it's facing the hard realities, but dealing with the hard realities as they come, and not being split, not being secret, and just living in the light. And that brings peace, that brings happiness to every human being. So if you start anywhere, start there.
Yeah, I agree with you. Integrity, and then we could go into a lot of other principles I would call wholehearted living principles, yes. But we could also call them recovery principles.
All right, Tyler, thank you for that discussion. You guys, if this was helpful, or if you hated what we said today, then leave us a review. We'd love to hear from you.
Thanks a lot, guys.
Yeah, we'll have a good day. We'll see you later.